Tonight is Sunday, 5th of July. I'm going to show a series of things that I've recorded over the last 2 weeks. So didn't do a video at the end of last week. Quite a lot's gone on, and we end in quite a good place. So get a first look at the real shape of the boat. So I'll go back to about 2 weeks ago, I think. I just flipped the boat over and was contemplating what to do next. So this is what I did. I'm sitting in the boat up against the first frame, looking backwards, looking aft. I did the rest of the filleting of the centerboard case structure yesterday, got that out of the way, but today, much more interesting. I am starting to cut or measure and cut these cross beams, and the thwarts will be epoxied onto these. Here is as far as I've got. The joins aren't beautiful, as you can see. They're not bad, but the gaps, but that's why I'm using epoxy, I think. So hopefully that will be sorted. But the satisfying thing is that these things are they are level, only at the point of the centerboard casing, and there are tiny adjustments to do, but yeah, it's just a bit of tweaking. But what I need to do is measure 230mm distance between the two, and that needs to be all the way from the centerboard case to the end, and they need to be in the same plane, so horizontal. So actually the work ahead is shaping the ends of these beams on both sides. And in the case of this side, starboard side, the beam that runs along the front of frame B will be glued obviously to frame B as well, but I decided it was prudent to also put this join in. So there you go. I'll get on with the other bits now, shaping the ends. I'm in the gazebo at last and really needed it today. The sunshine has been awesome. Next time. Bit of a catch up on a Thursday afternoon, making good progress with the battens for the thwarts and the seats. Lots of cutting, measuring, chiseling, backwards and forwards, fitting and then adjusting again, but pretty happy with what I've done today. Tomorrow I'll crack on with the same for the aft section, and then I need to make some knees that go under the side seats, so that will be in a day or so. And I'll try and film some of the more interesting stuff with maybe when I come to glue and put those things together. Another little update. I'm now wearing this monitor, courtesy of the doctor from when I was in hospital, and you can see I had to shave my chest, but I was looking in the mirror when I shaved, so first time round I shaved the wrong side. But anyway, that's on, just getting used to it, not really aware of it much, so isn't interfering with things. Beautiful day, and a bit of boat work next time round. It's a wild and windy Saturday afternoon. Most of the morning it was pouring with rain. Just going to give you a view of the setup here. Gazebo needed to be tied down and reinforced a little bit. That's all right. But my big task today has been to try and cut some new frame sections for the redesign that I'll talk about now. But I've tried cardboard to try and get the shape of the hull. I did something with MDF as a template, but that didn't really work. Too thick. Anyway, in the end, I did succeed using mathematics and geometry, angles and lengths of angles. So I have two good side frames, and I have the 4 knees that I need for the side benches. So here's the change. after talking to Dad this morning about buoyancy initially, led to having a look at the actual designs of thwarts and seats, and we were considering leaving the thwarts out altogether, although I think they do serve a strengthening purpose in this kind of stitch and glue. But anyway, I put the thwarts in, tried to I've also taken out section of frame C, as you can see, so that's no longer there. And then I tried to lie down underneath on the port side, and those thwarts were right on top of me, and there's not much room anyway. So we're going to leave those thwarts out altogether. Can't see that yet, but what's going on over there, those two beams will be cut out where the forward part of the seat meets the stern side of the seat. I'm going to put one of these frames that I've made, so a half frame just like the one on the left, so that should stiffen that section up. Then that will give complete access, kind of the full length up to frame B, and the forward thwart's going to stay as is. There's another fiddly bit to consider. The seats that have already been cut were cut to take a thwart in the middle, and they were cut over length. So to get the correct curve, I still have to cut quite a bit off the forward seat, which leaves that thwart gap. Luckily I've got the thwart plank too, so I'll just cut that down to size, but unfortunately it means 3 planks glued on each side rather than just 2 long ones, but that won't be seen at the end of the day. Okay, so it's been frustrating and slow going and a bit nerve-wracking at times, but I've got those things cut. I'm not sure if I'll do anything more this afternoon. I need to consider the steps ahead to get all of this glued up and secured. More about that next time. It's Sunday afternoon. Been a good weekend, plagued with a bit of heavy wind and rain, but I've kind of managed to get somewhere. So behind me are the seat beams and seat stringers or battens glued up, and next step tomorrow, I get the clamps off and then go to town with the thickened epoxy filler and make sure there are no gaps between these planks and the hull and between these joins and within the join. So I'm just going to pack it up for the day. There is rain forecast tonight, and yeah, just see what I do each time. So here goes. it's a bit of a palaver every time, and it's not the greatest of setups because you can see when it does rain the water ponds in the middle. So anyway, it's the way to carry on. So might put this up and keep going with a new phase next week. Anyway, signing out on a Sunday. Today is Thursday, the 2nd of July. Happy birthday, Mum. And I've had quite a bit of time to work on the boat today. BMI work has been rather sporadic. So I set out this morning to look at the foredeck and the arrangement there. Had a call with Dad and we looked at a curved foredeck that would kind of curve into the main cockpit. It looked really good, but when I looked more carefully at the drawings and the position of the mast, I decided it would just be too fiddly to try and get that right. So I've reverted to the original plan, which was just to make a foredeck from the frame A up to the bow. So the first step there is to get the beams fitted and the stringers, and that job has taken me most of the day. I'll show you now what I've done. From this angle, all looks pretty good. My cross-check joints are quite neat. Yeah, so it's a good structure. It's only when we step back and look at it, oh, still looking good, but now if you look up there at the bow, you can see that those two stringers are not ending in the same position, which to me says there's a bit of a twist at the bow. I've taken the absolute center line from that frame, which is center line of the boat, center lined onto that beam. All of these stringers are square, leading forwards, but when they hit the bow, they don't hit in the same place. There needs to be 65 millimeters between those two central stringers because a Samson post goes up near the bow. And of course they will all be covered by decking, but the bit that is of concern really, and if I bring the camera kind of square on, you see the difference. I mean, there's a good 30 millimeter, 35 millimeter difference, and I'm not quite sure what has happened there. It would appear that the inner stem and where the planks meet is slightly out of alignment. Not sure how much of a problem that's going to be. Might call the boat, what did I think of? I don't know, skew or off center. I'm not sure, but this is a bit of a shock when I saw that, but I just kind of kept going, and I'm actually really happy that I've managed to do these beams. A lot of measuring up, and I don't have the techniques that I guess one would learn at a boat building school. So measuring across a void, for example, all of it, very tricky. But the result is there. So the next step for the foredeck, while we're here, the shear plank needs to go on. So that goes on top of this fourth plank that you can see. And then the inner stem gets cut flush with the shear plank. And there's actually, what is it called? There's another tiny bit of decking that goes from the top, just comes out to roughly where one of those lines is that I've drawn. It's a triangular piece. So there's a bit of a gap between the top of the end of the bow and where the foredeck ends. More about that another time. But I'm going to sign off, and Friday coming up, so hopefully I'll get on to something new. Later. After much deliberating yesterday about mast foot and mast keeper arrangement, I've this morning glued up the mast foot, so some half check joins using 50 by 25 battens. And for the mast keeper with belaying pins and dead eyes, I'm using hardwood. I'm laminating these three pieces together. They are 75 wide and an inch thick. So this is going to enable me to shape this piece. There's a kind of rough curve of where the mast would sit. And this piece is going to go over the bulkhead, kind of screw into the deck. And I will probably put a batten underneath it up against the bulkhead, which will give it some extra support. So lots of thinking yesterday and inaction, but fortunately this morning I've managed to do something. So we'll see what they look like further down the line. This is a catch up on Sunday, 5th of July. Really good day, really good moment. I now have the shear plank in position. So this gives us an idea of the true shear, the shape of the boat. And I'm very happy. At each frame and in between, I get a dead level reading on the spirit level. So that's a view from that angle. I'm going to spend the next day or so probably walking up and down, trying to get as far away as I can to get a picture of the shear, but I think it looks pretty sweet. Try and give you the view from looking at the bow. Those bow planks will obviously be cut off, and the idea is that about a foot or so along that sheer strake I will do a gerald, so the two planks will come together as carvel right up at the bow, or about half a foot away, I'm guessing. So that'll give its own feature. It's going to be a challenge getting that right, but I've got some good advice and technique from Sally as backup, so I'm going to take that on. I know the last couple of weeks I haven't really recorded much. Been a lot of thinking going on and designing. I have designed, well, not completely yet, but here's a feature to think about. The foredeck that goes on those beams can either be brought back over the bulkhead, so a kind of overhang, and that can incorporate in the center the mast keeper arrangement, which is a hardwood, 1 inch thick hardwood plate that needs to be fixed somewhere, so that either onto the foredeck and coming off, or possibly behind the bulkhead, up against the bulkhead underneath the deck if it overhangs. So there are a few things to think about. I think I'm getting an idea of where I'd like to go, but that's definitely something that would be good to get comments on. So I think the next week I'm going to have to press on because time is running out, but in the next week I'm going to need to glue on these sheer strakes. Before doing that, I'll need to tackle the geralding, which will involve a bit of taking apart and refitting to see that they all fit. And then I'll deal with the gunnel, and I've got a good idea there as well from Sally. So to run an innel all the way along the inside top of that sheer strake, and then to cut a hockey stick shape out of the other bit of timber so that it hides or covers the end grain of the ply, and it'll be a nice rubbing strake gunnel. So it'll be a nice solid unit, all in one with no ply. So those are the tasks ahead. And then obviously needing to finish the decking and seats and the foredeck. There's a bowsprit I need to make as well. But I think it's all coming along. I've just got to keep at it. So I will bid you adieu, and more in the next phases.